the cry, which is Hi, brothers and sisters. After the Julian dates pass for September 23rd to 24th, the final calendar that remains according to Sister Langua's visions is the Enoch calendar. I had suspected this might happen before the Julian dates pass, because why else would God have shown her 3 calendars if we were not meant to watch for all 3? Instead of going straight into the timeline though, I want to frame this Enoch update as part of Elijah's rapture journey from 2 Kings chapter 2. As I was studying this chapter, I noticed some major parallels to the journey that the Watchmen have been going through these past few weeks and months. So I think it's a perfect way of pulling back a bit and seeing the bigger picture of how God has been leading us to our final destination, the rapture of the bride. So let's begin with the 4 locations that are part of Elijah's rapture journey: Gilgal, Bethel, Jericho, and the Jordan River. Since the names of people and places in the Bible are extremely significant, let's look at what each of those names mean. Gilgal means a wheel rolling, Bethel means house of God, Jericho means its moon, and Jordan means descender. When I look up the meaning behind these names, I instantly realize that they seem to be describing the journey that the Watchmen have been on. So Gilgal was Elijah's starting location. For many of us watchmen, especially the ones that have been watching for years and years, watching for the rapture felt like a never-ending journey, like a wheel that just keeps on rolling without a destination. Brother Joshua's testimony in June of 2025 finally pointed to a definitive time for everyone to watch for, starting the first steps to a specific destination, which was September 23rd to 24th, 2025, our Bethel. His testimony was the cry announcing the coming of the bridegroom to the house of God. Thousands of visions and dreams confirmed the cry, which is heard by the whole world, with rapture becoming the most searched term on September 23rd, and with even the mainstream news covering it. Unfortunately, many of the new Elishas that started watching along with the Elijah Watchmen lost their faith after the original September 23rd to 24th dates passed and stopped their journey here in Bethel, the first watch using the Gregorian calendar. After the Gregorian dates passed, the Watchmen realized that the dates Brother Joshua shared may not be for the Gregorian calendar, so they shifted their attention to the Julian calendar for the second watch. This is in part due to Sister Langua's visions of 3 calendars, the Gregorian, the Julian, and the Enochian. They became very focused on the full moon that coincided with the Julian dates of October 6th to 7th, which lined up with the Feast of Tabernacles Eve. As we can see, this focus on the moon matches the meaning of Jericho, its moon. Some of the Watchmen have mentioned the possibility that the dead started to rise on this day. Although this is not something that can be easily proven, and I cannot be sure of it, there is scriptural backing for it, like the raising of the dead saints at the crucifixion, days before Jesus resurrected. It would also perfectly match the mirroring of the death of the firstborn on Passover by Tabernacles Eve that I've discussed in my previous video, since the exact inverse of God taking the spirits of the living firstborn children and leaving behind dead bodies is God raising up dead bodies to life. Interestingly, Jericho is connected to the Feast of Tabernacles that immediately follows the Julian dates, with the marching around the altar for the 7 days of the feast exactly mirroring the same pattern as the marching around Jericho, 1 time for the first 6 days and then 7 times on the 7th day. Also, the ascension of the Israelites into Jericho after the collapse of its walls on the 7th day is a foreshadow of the rapture. So this leads us to the day that follows the 7th day of Tabernacles, Shemini Atzeret, and the 3rd watch on the Enoch calendar. The Enoch calendar is likely the true Hebrew calendar that was used before the time of the Babylonian exile. On this calendar, the years start after the spring equinox and the months start on a true new moon, not the first visible sliver moon. That means the Enoch calendar is currently 1 day early compared to the current Hebrew calendar that is using the visible sliver moon as the first day of the month. The September means 7th month, from the Latin septem, which means 7, then September 23rd to 24th on the Enoch calendar lands on October 14th to 16th, overlapping with Shemini Atzeret on the current Hebrew calendar because this is the 23rd and this is the 24th if the Enoch calendar is 1 day ahead. What's particularly interesting about the Julian and Enochian dates for September 23rd to 24th is that they perfectly bookend the 7 days of Tabernacles. This may fit the biblical pattern of a 7-day consecration in the doorway of the tabernacle seen here in Leviticus 8, where Aaron and his sons were being prepared to enter the priesthood of God. If the dead were raised on Tabernacles Eve, then perhaps the living need to go through a 7-day consecration during the Feast of Tabernacles before we are ready to enter heaven as God's royal priesthood, which we are called to be in 1 Peter 2:9. If this pattern holds true, then that means the rapture for the bride occurs during the 2nd and 3rd watch. Luke 12:38 specifically mentions Jesus coming in the 2nd or 3rd watch, which I find very interesting. This also lines up with the Jordan River being the final destination that Elijah travels to before being raptured. As I'm sure we all know, the crossing of the Jordan into the Promised Land is another foreshadow of the rapture, since we would be crossing the waters above the firmament into our Promised Land, or heaven, during the event. If the Jordan River is in fact the final destination, then Jesus may descend to rapture his bride once our hypothetical Jordan is crossed. But what if the third watch at the Jordan isn't the final destination? Elijah wasn't actually raptured at the crossing of the Jordan, but only after walking for some time beyond the crossing. So it's possible that we may need to wait until the fourth watch. In Matthew 14:25, Jesus doesn't come down from the mountain and walk out on the water to save his disciples until the fourth watch of the night. So here are the remaining dates that I still see as possible fulfillments of Jesus' words to brother Joshua. They combine the dates of the true Enoch calendar and the modern Hebrew calendar to allow for the biggest window of possibility for the first rapture to occur. First, we have the dates of October 14th to 17th that we just discussed as the third watch. This is assuming that September means 7th month, so September 23rd to 24th is Tishri 23 to 24. This overlaps Shemini Atzeret on the modern Hebrew calendar and would match the 21-day delay from the Feast of Trumpets found in Daniel 10:13. Next, we have October 31st to November 2nd, which would be Heshvan 10, the day Noah entered the ark. This day is the 40th day from the Feast of Trumpets. 40 is used to represent a time of testing throughout the scriptures and may possibly match the amount of time it took for the 10 plagues of Egypt to take place during the Exodus story. I'm sure many of you can relate to feeling tested during these past few weeks. Then we have November 7th to 9th, which will be Heshvan 17, the day the flood began. The flood lifting the ark into the air away from danger is a clear foreshadow of the rapture. Also, if the hypothetical 40 days of the plagues ended on Passover, and the Red Sea crossing is traditionally believed to happen on the 7th day of unleavened bread, then the Red Sea crossing would be the 47th day from the start of the plagues. That matches the flood starting on Heshvan 17 being the 47th day from the Feast of Trumpets. This would fulfill Jesus' words to Joshua by assuming that the Exodus story started on the Feast of Trumpets of September 23rd to 24th and would end on the 47th day to match the Red Sea crossing. As a side note, this time frame is only a few days before November 11th, the day Pastor Philip Barnett, who is credible when it comes to prophetic words, was shown that the nuclear war begins. I recall some people having dreams that the rapture would happen 3 days before the nukes start to fall, so I can definitely see this as a possibility. Finally, we have December 13th through 16th, which would be Kislev 23 to 24, overlapping with Hanukkah Eve. This is assuming that September means 9th month, so September 23rd to 24th is Kislev 23 to 24. Hanukkah is known as a second Feast of Tabernacles, so Hanukkah Eve has a definite connection to Tabernacles Eve, which was part of the second watch. Kislev 24 is also mentioned in Haggai 2, stating that God will shake the heavens and earth and will make Zerubbabel as a signet ring. Zerubbabel means sown in Babylon or the world, so he may represent the Gentile bride, meaning Haggai 2 may be referring to the rapture of the bride. So finally, I'll pull up the timeline as a refresher on how this all fits together. As you can see, all of the dates on this timeline are anchored by day counts or a preset date like asteroid Apophis, all except for the first rapture for the bride here. I could see any of these dates fitting here, so let's keep watching to see what happens. With all of the end time signs ramping up like never before, I'm confident that we're in the literal season of the rapture, so don't lose faith and don't let anyone steal your crown. Continue to share the gospel and the news of Jesus' return while there's still time, and keep close to Jesus no matter what. God bless all of you and hope to see you soon.